Cyberpunk 2077 just got a pretty interesting update. The build of the game hosted on Steam was updated a few days ago for the first time in nearly 3 months. This is probably it, the huge 1.5 patch that CDPR has been working on for around 5 months now, which is also probably going to include new DLCs and the next-gen version. Now, this being updated on Steam doesn't necessarily mean the release date is imminent, but patch 1.5 and the next-gen version are releasing at some point in the next 2 months. And this is a very good sign that things are progressing, and maybe they're even in the testing phase right now, and that's why the build was updated. And in my eyes, I think this patch is really going to be a make it or break it moment for Cyberpunk 2077. Over the past few months, with sales and to a lesser degree the modding scene, the game has found a new life, hitting and actually holding player counts it really hasn't seen since release, and getting flooded with positive reviews. But during this time, CDPR has been immensely quiet, and there's a lot riding on this next update, as Cyberpunk 2077 is sort of broken. There's some pretty blatant things that definitely need to be addressed or fixed. Performance on last-gen consoles has always been one of the biggest issues, but even some more vanity things like the police AI, police chases would be a cool feature. Modders have added that in, but actually getting it as a fundamental feature would be huge. And although those are some of the very obvious ones, the things that have really taken over the talking points, there's actually a lot more beyond that. The modder behind the comprehensive full gameplay rebalance mod for Cyberpunk, which is basically a comprehensive overhaul for this game, actually wrote a 70-page mega report on odd or broken things he found in the game, like how exactly certain features work, or more specifically, how certain things don't work. And these are all basically various discoveries he's made as he has created this comprehensive mod, because he's one of the few people that have dove into basically all aspects of the game. So naturally, I read the report, and some of the things are super interesting and desperately need to be addressed. One of the big things with this game is enemy scaling. Your health in Cyberpunk goes from about 200 HP in the early game to 345 HP at the max level of 50, so it doesn't even double. On the other side of things, enemy HP scales massively, starting out at around 100 and going all the way up to about 10,000 HP at level 50. So enemies become significantly more powerful, and more specifically, they really just become much larger bullet sponges, which does lead to a myriad of issues. Explosions are basically OP against you because they have to deal boatloads of damage to remain relevant against enemies. So explosions may barely scratch enemies, but actually be a huge hindrance to you. Conversely, other things like the Berserk superhero landing does 500 damage throughout the entire game, which means that early on, pretty good, late game basically does nothing. It's almost worthless to actually use this superhero landing or finding specific circumstances where it's helpful. Friendly NPCs do irrelevant damage because they're designed to attack the player at 200, 300 health, not enemies with 10,000 health. The smart rocket falls off super hard, making it a fairly unusable cyberware unless you're using the OP tranquilizer mod, because it scales off of your own health. And one of the other odd things in this game is some enemies, for one reason or another, just really don't do any damage to you. They either have very low accuracy with their weapons, or just their damage output itself is incredibly low. So what you'll notice sometimes in groups of enemies is there's a couple of them that just don't really do anything. Like you'll notice here, these two guys with SMGs are absolutely obliterating my health bar. They deal tons of damage per shot. But the guy with the shotgun standing next to me is really doing nothing. Like I could stand here all day and just let him shoot me, and it actually won't make much of a dent in my health. There's other odd things like electrical and poison resistances that are on some of the armors, but enemies don't actually deal these damage types. LMG mod slots being broken still. Thankfully, we do have a mod that fixes that now. Some mods in the game, like weapon mods, just don't spawn. Neon Arrow, Phantom, and Vendetta all have 2 or less spawns in the entire game, and they don't appear at vendors. And a bunch of perks just don't work. Most of the crouching or cover-based perks don't actually do anything. The Superconductor perk doesn't do anything because it's supposed to give you a bonus against enemy armor. Enemies in Cyberpunk don't actually have armor, they just get more health. And there's even a perk for grenade hit chance, but that actually isn't a thing. Among many, many other things, again, it's a 78-page report. I'm just highlighting some of the notable ones. Lots of these are relatively minor. Some so minor that you could play through all of Cyberpunk 2077 and never even realize that these issues are in the game. But the larger point here is when it comes to fixing Cyberpunk 2077, CDPR is going to have issues on multiple fronts. The glaring issues that everyone is aware of, the crashing problems, the police AI, general NPC AI, balance oddities, and more. But there's also this level of of tiny issues, like some of the perks just outright not working after 13 months feels really bad in a AAA $60 game. It's hard to defend that kind of blatant bug just being baked in for this long. And to me, at least, for this patch to be a huge success, they need to address things on both the small scale and the large scale. CDPR made a choice with patching their game. Originally, they were releasing periodic and small to medium-sized updates, but something shifted in mid-2021 after the massive patch 1.3. They made a choice to basically stop doing periodic updates, and now their biggest update yet is going to have about 5-6 months in the oven where they've been working diligently, and based on interviews, this is going to be one of the most comprehensive ones when it comes to features, making improvements or edits to some of the features and not just fixing bugs. And on top of that, we also do have the next-gen version and likely a bunch of free DLCs that are going to come out. We saw 17 of them leak, but at this point, we've only had 3 of them release. The decision to shift towards this one huge update and almost treat it as a relaunch, it seems, means that there is so much riding on this now. We've been patiently waiting for months, and if it disappoints in a major way, like some of the past updates have with adding in new bugs or making bizarre or mysterious changes, that's going to be a huge blow to the momentum of this game going forward. And to be clear here, people will still play Cyberpunk 2077 again, regardless of patch 1.5 actually entails. But the hope here is really for the future, that Cyberpunk 2077 can have that turnaround we've seen several other games have, and this patch brings the updates or overhauls that are needed. Further, from some of their earnings calls, we have heard and seen how more and more devs are being shifted to working on expansions compared to game updates. They're investing in their future. There's more manpower on expansions now than there ever has been before, so if this patch does have major issues, it makes you wonder, well, will they be as quick at fixing them, because seemingly there's less people actually working on updates after this one. And I can already hear some of you in the comments, well, I already enjoy Cyberpunk 2077. This update isn't essential as I'm describing it. No, though, yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 is a perfectly enjoyable and a lot of fun. In its current build, in particular, if you're playing on PC, it still has a bunch of problems, both genuine in-game issues, but also a huge PR problem. Many gamers have lost a ton of trust in CDPR, and them making things right via a massive free update is essential to win that trust back, if that's even possible at this point. But also, those in-game problems too really need to be resolved to take this from a pretty good to a great game going forward, which it definitely should be. The framework is there for a great game. To me, this is an issue with Fallout 76, released in a hyper buggy state. Bethesda patched it, updated it, but they never really got rid of all of that jank, and it still remains as a moderately buggy game or things just going wrong with updates. CDPR needs to make sure that doesn't happen with Cyberpunk. There's serious potential for CD Projekt Red to basically springboard off of this and into the future. They definitely have a great framework, but honestly, I'm pretty hopeful about this one. CDPR is in a pretty great situation where fans have been buying and loving their game even while they haven't been updating it. They've been working on that update, but it hasn't come out yet. It really made it seem like this hunker down and do one big update approach was worth it, and the stage is definitely set for a big moment and turnaround for this game. Plus, we're going to finally get a look at what the proper version of it is on next-gen consoles. Right now, what you're playing on a PS5 or Xbox Series X is an emulated version of the game from last gen. So actually getting to experience it as it should be experienced could be a huge moment, assuming everything goes right. But overall, that's why I view this update as such a critical one. It seems like CDPR is really putting a lot of stock in making sure this goes right, putting a lot of time, resources, etc. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this update, a ton of headlines, and I really do hope it delivers. And again, I am actually pretty hopeful. I definitely think there could be some great things added with this one, and then it could kind of transition into a few smaller updates that follow it into some DLCs or even some expansion news. Technically, we don't even know if the expansions are coming in 2022 at all, but them at least mentioning or starting to tease what is next will get a lot of people excited if this patch delivers. With that said, hopefully you guys found this one informative. I'd love to hear from you down below. What do you want to see from this update? What things do you want to see added, overhauled, or even just fixed in the game? With that said, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.